I'm now delighted to introduce Jeremy Rye. Jeremy is a long-standing friend and supporter of Gatekeeper, and has been connected with us for a long time, and also has studied with Peter Dawkins a great deal. Jeremy sees the landscape both as a teacher, a friend, and guide, and he runs regular, fascinating dragon walks in London, exploring the chakra energies there, and is going to speak to us this afternoon on walking nature's way. So over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you, Stephen. It's absolutely lovely to be here. Thank you so much for introducing me. It was actually fabulous to be following on from Jolie's talk, because the whole time that she was talking, there were so many key words about very much the things that I want to talk to you about and share with you as well, but in a slightly different way. The most fundamental thing being about this idea of building positive relationships and building positive relationships with nature, and how we are so entwined with nature, whether we feel we've lost that connection or whether that connection has changed, that by working with nature, by seeing ourselves as so much a part of nature, that we can maintain ourselves and our own set of balance throughout a whole year, and years and years and years. And so what I want to talk to you about today is something that I've been doing over years and years now, which is working with nature on a monthly basis, and working with nature, helping me understand elements of myself that come up year upon year, but also asking nature to help me to deal with these things in a positive way, which when sort of Jodie was sort of saying about building that positive relationship, it is all about that interaction with nature in different ways, and using the skills and the tools that we have readily available to ourselves, like pilgrimage, like working with trees, or different skills that we bring ourselves, that we find a way to maintain our own well-being through nature. Everybody knows about the positive aspects about being outside in nature, but to actually work with the gifts that it can give you on a month-by-month basis only enhances and strengthens our well-being and our way of being. Now, I'm going to share my screen here and take you through some of these ideas and some of the things that I've been working with. So this is a year in one screen. And what we've got here is the whole of the 12 months, which is known as the circle of the 12 stars. This is, in symbolism, the crown of immortality, because as a system and as a cycle, it continues to grow, to change, to evolve, regardless who plays a part of it, whether we do, you do, any of the trees, any of the plants, any of the animals work. This is a system and a process that will continue forever. It is really about this idea of unity, solidarity, and harmony that exists within this system. This is effectively this idea of the wheel of the year, and we walk this wheel of the year with nature. And we start, and I should have started this whole talk by proclaiming a happy new year, because effectively November is the beginning of this wheel, the beginning of this year. We start with the solar festival, but it is the gateway to winter. And then we work our way around this cycle, working with each of the solar festivals, working with each of the seasons in different ways. And we each get gifts from each of that month that we can then choose to work within ourselves, working with the solar festivals as we work, marking certain points. So November is the gateway into winter, February, the gateway into spring, May, the gateway into summer, August, the gateway into winter. Each of these defines another phase in what we're working with. And for many of you, this is incredibly familiar about how we all work and when we do what we do and how we mark these solar festivals. And as Jolie was saying about when they perform mama plays, they were done at very specific points in time to connect ourselves back into nature as well. I'm sure she'd agree with that. But this is a cycle that continues on its own, whether we engage with it or not. And in fact, for me, so many people are also engaged in this process, regardless of whether they recognize it. Certain things that we talk about in certain months, wanting to do certain actions, whether it be spring cleaning or feeling like there's a cleanse going on in our bodies, these are all marked because certain months offer us certain opportunities. But if we actually actively understand when those opportunities are coming and we positively work with them, then we get a better flow. We get a better understanding when it's right to be working in certain parts of ourselves. But when we do and how we do is defined not by the circle, but by ourselves. So what I've done is I've just brought up this astrology charts for different people, because how we respond to each of those sections, how we respond to each of those months there is very unique to ourselves. But we get a very strong understanding that there is a process that we're all going through. So there is a theme for each month that is offered to us to work with. How we choose to work with it, that depends on our own astrology or our own unique self about how we respond to it. So that's the difference. But the offer, the themes that come up each month, those are universal. That's what we share, but we also share it with nature. So symbolically, as nature goes through its cycle, we're going through the same cycle in ourselves. And what we see happening outside nature, it's the perfect November day today. Here, I've got bright sunshine. I've got leaves changing everywhere. Everything is falling to the ground. Leaves are hitting the ground and they are then being taken back down into the earth to be absorbed and provide the nourishment for next year. This is part of the cycle that we're also in of the year, where we go inner. We start to look back in inner. I'm going to go through more of that later on, but the proposition is that we are following nature's cycle, whether we realize it or not. We actively engage with that cycle in this way. We're taking nature's hand and walking with nature in this way. Then we understand when certain things come up and when we can work in certain ways with certain aspects of ourselves to get the best benefit of all the gifts that nature has to offer us. As a certain further addition, with each of those seasons, we're dealing with different elements as well. With winter, we're dealing with the earth. Jodie talked about the Tara. I work with the Tara as well. That's the Pentacles. In the spring, we're working with the air. We're working with the swords, the fire, the wands, the water, the cups. The focus of each of those seasons at one level deals with our resources, challenging our thinking, the fire of growth, the water of feeling and preparation for the next that comes through. And you can work with each of these seasons, with each of these months, with the emphasis on those elements being a predominance of the work that you're doing. But over and above those particular sections that we have here, we have all these different themes that are gifted to us in each month. So if we start to have a quick look at this table here, if we start where we are now, where winter commences, we start with that Samhain, the solar festival. And we've got 4 themes that follow us throughout that whole month. Now, these themes are predominantly throughout the whole of this season, I found, but they're at their highest within these months. So our inner child, any working with that sense of our inner child, November's the time to really be focusing on it. Finding that sense of inner peace, finding that alignment, finding that core strength happens in November. Dealing with that shadow side of ourselves, the real inner work, again, November. But importantly, as part of all of that, we see that element of hope. And as we flow through the year, you'll see different things popping up. For example, December, about strengthening. Think of all of the work that's going on in nature about preparations for the soils. It's strengthening in ourselves. Look at when we get to Imbolc and dedication. We're looking at awakening. We're looking about testing those dedications. We're dealing with grief. We're dealing with a shift and a change, because winter, we're moving into spring. And as spring grows, we have commitments, we have dealings with boundaries, dealings with authority, bringing in balance, cleansing. All of these themes come through in each of these months at their epitome. You find they'll come up again throughout the season, but this is the time to focus on it. And then you get into the summer and the power, the growth, the unfurling, fire, freedom. Everything begins to move. So in June, you're dealing with the release of everything, moving things forward. In May, unification, knowing that things are coming together so that you can put your energy around them. May gives you everything you need to make those decisions, to make those choices, to put that energy behind it. As we move into August, transformation, nourishment, feelings about worth. October, you may well have experienced in October this sense of the new integrating everything that's happened throughout that whole year, coming together, feeling unsettled as the new comes in, having to trust that that new is right, it is where you are, but you're preparing to begin the new cycle again in November. Each of these months gives us a gift of inner work in some way that helps us maintain and gather ourselves for whatever we're working, whatever we're bringing into being throughout the whole year. The solar festivals, a recognizable form for all of you. They track all of this as we go through, from where we've just been, Samhain with the Festival of Peace, to Yule, to rebirth, to dedication, to promise, to unification, where everything comes together, we can put our energy behind. Before we get to Lugnasa, transformation, and finally the consummation, the completion of our work before we come back around again. Marking these solar festivals as marks throughout the year is vital for our engagement with nature and following and celebrating that part in nature as well. The main body of what I do and the way that I love to work with all of this is that each month I do a pilgrimage. I do what I call a celebration walk, and I do the same route every single month. And in doing that, I'm asking nature to give me the best experiences that that month has to offer me and the gifts that it has to offer me. So I always start at the beginning of the pilgrimage in a period of reflection where I'm looking back at what has been happening on the month before, bringing myself to this very strong central point where I am now, recognizing what has happened since the last time I did this walk. Setting that intention on this walk, I want to see, enjoy, and experience all that is best about this month, to be able to celebrate November in all its glories and receive its gifts. And then when I start that walk, I move into noticing and listening and receiving, and have had the most wonderful gifts, like any journey and any pilgrimage, being open, walking with that light, allowing yourself to tread lightly on the landscape. I've had the most amazing insights. I've had the most amazing physical gifts. Let me show you just for a second. One that came to me, I picked this piece of timber as I was walking along and thought, that's mine, that's a gift, that's something I came back for nature. I brought it back to the house and thought I need to arrange it. I didn't know how to arrange it until I started to turn it up and turn it round. And suddenly my dragon appeared. The most incredible symbolism for me for everything I was working with at the moment. And I'd not seen that on the path. I just put it in my bag and walked along with it. So these gifts throughout the time I'm doing this come to help me understand what it is that I'm working with in this year or this month, and I receive its gifts. It requires you to make yourself and put yourself in a place of vulnerability, because you are asking for those gifts, not knowing whether the landscape will respond, but I've always got what I've needed every single month I do this walk. My understandings, my insights. And then taking these themes that I'm given, often all the gifts relate to these themes. November's themes: peace, inner child, shadow work, and hope. These are the ones that I'm working with at the moment. These are things that are giving me the gifts of November and helping me to investigate, to do this inner work that this time of winter offers us. Sometimes it's light work because it's nothing that's really required, but it's always a commitment for myself to spend time understanding what there is or what there might need to be. Particularly other than the walk, which I think is the most essential part of what I do. I'm also doing tree work because I've been gifted a single tree for each of the months that I can go and work with one of those themes in different ways. This month, the medlar, very surprising to me when the medlar came in as November for me. But particularly when you think of its fruit that requires a frost in November to transform into something that is edible, I can understand how I can work with that medlar. December's the holly, January the birch, that foundation tree. Each of those has their own symbolism. And as I unpack and I work with those symbolisms, I then relate that symbolism to a particular theme that relates to that month in general. I get more insights very specifically around it. November, the medlar, it's about shadow, doing my shadow work, looking at resistance, because the medlar, its symbolism, it helps us cross timeline. It helps us unblock ancestral blockages where it requires healing. And it helps me bring in a level of acceptance of all of that shadow side of myself. The medlar can be used, obviously, throughout the whole time of year, but in November, that it's at the height of its gift to us to be able to cross those timelines, cross those ancestral lines, be able to see where resistance is, to be working with the shadow parts of ourselves and what it is that we need to help bring us in that level of acceptance. So the tree work forms one part of what I do. I work with 4 themes. The next one, meditation. Meditation on inner peace. This time, particularly, the meditation has taken me into this chamber deep in the earth. So it's following what's happening with nature at the moment into a sounding chamber where I got to see exactly what throws off my inner peace. I got illumination and insights into how I can maintain that strength through sitting in meditation on the theme of peace. It was a very important message for me at this time, because my peace, especially in what's going on around us at the moment, has been severely challenged. And to be able to find that meditation space and to use that to heal and help my inner peace has been an amazing journey so far, and we are only halfway through November. I do a lot of sort of arts therapy with nature as well. And this clearly expressed my inner child. In this one, I've been making labyrinths out of leaves. I've been going out into the woodland and finding these fallen leaves and making them into a labyrinth which I can then walk and explore myself with my inner child. And in fact, I found it able to leave things in the center of that labyrinth, in which case that I can then understand more about what it is that my inner child needs through play, through actively being out with nature. I mean, some of these examples on the photographs are things that I've created and I've worked with throughout the year, and I always leave it back into nature. So with the labyrinth, we dispense it in nature. Though I may bring some of the gifts home, as I showed you, that's an unusual one that I asked to keep. The others all return back to nature so that we begin and keep that cycle going over time. I love being out in nature. I feel it gives me the ability to do it. But for example, with the celebration walk that I feel is a fundamental of each of these months, it doesn't have to be anywhere wild. It can just be somewhere green. It can be your local park, or it can be in your garden if you can spend enough time to receive the gifts that nature has to offer you for that particular month. The walking is important. The walking and feeling yourself, the rhythm of walking, like we know with all the pilgrimages we do. Every step we take is a step through working with different chakra systems, taking ourselves from the start point, the root, right back to through the crown, back to where we began again. I do that all on my celebration walks. And it's important that we feel those pilgrimages, because those are the ones that will give us all this information that we require. And it's important that we understand that nature has these gifts. And in doing this work, in being out in nature at this time, we are actually also giving back to nature exactly what others would have said today as well, that this is a positive relationship. I feel that I'm giving back and enhancing nature's work in its well. It's regenerative well-being for both sides, because when you're engaging with the cycle of nature, when you're actively following it and working with it, you are enhancing and in line with nature in its own way, and it will respond. There are gifts to give as we gifts back as well. The final thing I work with on all of this per month is rituals. This ritual is all about hope, working with the purple flame of transformation, taking myself through a ritual, working to bring in hope, or to understand what it is that I'm asking to hope for. What is that spark of hope that starts at the beginning of this cycle and then transforms and grows and changes as we all go through? The ritual is particularly important for me because it not only works to hold me and for me to gain insights, but it also is something I can then send out and share into the world as well. And I think it's most important that everything we do, the positives we receive, is also being sent out as well. Whether we do this with consciousness, it happens because of the way we work and how we work in the world. So I'm going to take us back through just at the beginning of all of this before we finish. Just to take you through this 12-month cycle again. To understand that this is a cycle that is about unity, solidarity, and harmony. It is our harmony with nature. When we work it, nature responds. When we ask it, nature responds. And we get these insights into what we want to do. We are, as I said at the beginning, already working with this, whether we are doing it consciously. But to do it consciously and actually harness what it is that nature has to offer us in each of those months has helped me find a place of well-being within myself that is about flow. It's naturally dealing with things when they naturally occur and seeing them happening in nature as well, through those celebratory walks, through actively working with trees and going out and finding the particular tree that I want to work with in this month, and allowing nature to feed and inform, which I think is the best way of ensuring that we have a strong and continuing connection with nature throughout the whole year. There we go. I will stop sharing now. And if there's any questions, it would be delightful to answer them.
Thank you, Jeremy. Absolutely wonderful talk. Such a richness of knowledge. And, you know, clearly you have been taught by nature very well. And I love the, you know, the thought of working in harmony with nature in this way, rather as Caro was with her trusty horse. It's very beautiful. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, we've got Elizabeth Marie has said, fabulous, Jeremy, thank you.
I would really encourage you to set up a practice of doing a circular walk or a celebratory walk each month, and just see, because we're often out walking anyway, but if you set that intention and just shift our thinking onto that, even that will give you A, huge joys, but B, huge gifts coming back to you from nature, because it's ready, it's poised, wanting to give you these gifts hugely. And so ask it just once a month.
So do you do it the same day every month, or is it not as rigid as that?
It's not quite as rigid as that, but I do the same walk every single month, and I always try and do it at the beginning of the month to give myself the whole month to explore whatever I'm given and in the ways I want to give it. But when I've talked to other people about this, there are other people who work with angels, and they're beginning to discover that there's an angel for them for each month that they then work with. So though the themes stay the same, how you engage with it is very much dependent on your skills. Tarot, angels, you know, anything like crystals, they all respond to this sort of way of working.
That's beautiful, thank you. And now I've got Jolie says, with the birth chart slide you showed, have you relayed the wheel of the year over your personal birth chart?
Yes, I have. I have done so indeed, yeah. And this is one of the reasons why some of those trees come to me in the ways they do, because it relates to my birth chart and everything else as well. So if you are an astrologist, I am a, I don't know what you call it, rudimentary astrologist, then you'll see much greater richness and depth when you look at how your chart works, and then how the wheel of the year will work with that as well. So yeah, absolutely.
That sounds amazing. Absolutely fantastic. Well, I'm going to take up your suggestion of the monthly walk for sure. And I like the idea it's the same walk each time, so you actually see the changes.
You do, yeah. And see things you've never seen on any other month, just in one month. Yeah, quite incredible.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Thank you. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.